Hello, everyone. Good day to you. Depending on where you're watching me from, you're welcome to my channel. And today we're just going to look into some situation with Harry and the court case. And I hope you learn something from it. So I'm going to just put you through to it and see what you get from it. Let me know what your thoughts are. Leave us a comment. Thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day. Sarah.
He's called it his life's work. The Duke of Sussex's hatred of the tabloid press is well documented. His argument against photographers and newspapers dates back to the death of his mother. And today, a court heard how every aspect of the Duke's life was written about, his lawyer saying nothing was out of bounds. Well, this week, Prince Harry will have his day in court.
The Duke of Sussex is fighting Fleet Street.
Prince Harry's action against the Daily Mirror is underway.
The events surrounding his mother's death presents the media.
Bringing damages claims against the Mirror Group.
He claims the tabloids tapped his landline and hacked his phone.
Harry's court papers make huge allegations.
This is Prince Harry versus the papers round 3.
A very good evening. I'm Jonathan Samuels, and today Prince Harry has begun his biggest battle yet with the British press. The Duke of Sussex is accusing Mirror Group newspapers, the proprietor and publisher of the Daily Mirror, the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, of unlawful information gathering between 1991 and 2011, which his legal team says resulted in a number of articles being published. It's not the only newspaper publisher that the Duke has a case against. Rupert Murdoch's News Group newspapers, the owners of The Sun, and associated newspapers who publish the Daily Mail. But this is the first time Prince Harry has gone to trial, the first time he's given evidence as a witness, and the first senior British royal to appear in the witness box since the 1890s. Coming up, we'll bring you all the latest from the trial with updates from our team who've been inside court. We'll have the opening remarks from the lawyers, including allegations about Princess Diana's phone being hacked, claims described as total speculation, and Prince Harry's lawyer insisting he does not have a vendetta against the press. Plus, we'll look ahead to the main event. The Duke of Sussex is expected to arrive at the High Court tomorrow and take to the witness box. Plus, we'll be analysing what we know so far with our special guests, Persephone Bridgman-Baker, media lawyer and partner at Carter Ruck, and Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, deputy editor of the Daily Mirror and a media commentator. Good evening to both of you. Thanks for your time. So why don't we start with a look at what is being claimed by Prince Harry. Now, he says he would often get missed calls or hang up phone calls from unknown numbers. He wouldn't receive voicemails family and friends said they had left, and unheard voicemails would appear as already played. He says private information appeared in newspapers with no reasonable explanation for how it could have been discovered. And photographers would show up at private events and locations. Well, let's bring in our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock, who's been at court all day. Laura, the Duke didn't turn up, did he? And he was accused of time wasting. But nonetheless, we still did get a lot of detail, didn't we, about his allegations?
We certainly did, and I think the very testy start to proceedings today gave us all a real taste of what Prince Harry can expect tomorrow. I think there is a basic rule in all court cases: don't get on the wrong side of the judge. And it will be interesting to see tomorrow if we're given reasons as to why Prince Harry wasn't in court. We just don't know why he wasn't here today. He certainly will not want to have annoyed the judge. This case is really important to him. We've been hearing today how alleged hacking engulfed his whole life from a very, very early age, and not just his life, but the lives of those who were closest to him, including his late mother. Harry knows that by coming here tomorrow, he will draw huge attention to not just the case, but his wider cause, this cause to try and reform, to change the media landscape. He is, of course, though, taking a huge personal risk. And what will be interesting tomorrow is seeing how he performs. His legal team, we know, will have advised him as much as they can when it comes to the questions he can expect to face tomorrow. But they can't tell him, they're not allowed to tell him what to say. He'll be prepped but not coached, and there is a significant difference. He's, of course, someone who's very used to the spotlight, isn't he? But he certainly isn't used to the atmosphere inside Court 15 here. And I think the preparation he can get himself ready for is nothing compared to the pressures he's going to face when he's in the witness stand tomorrow. It will be very interesting to see what happens when the Mirror's legal team press him, probe him, goad him. And I think we'll all be judging Harry not just by what he says tomorrow, but perhaps by what he doesn't say as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating day, Laura. Thank you very much indeed. Why don't we get into the detail of what was said in court today, though? Joining me in the studio, Persephone Bridgman-Baker, media lawyer and partner at Carter Ruck, and Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror and former deputy editor of the Daily Mirror, a media commentator as well. Really great to have you with us. Just before we chat, I want to just tell everyone what the judge had to say when Harry didn't turn up in court. The judge is Mr. Justice Fancourt, and he opened proceedings this morning by saying, "I am a little surprised at the direction that the first witness is not going to be available today." Persephone, what did you make of that? Legally, should he have been there?
So today was about opening statements first and foremost, and it is slightly unusual for, particularly if you only have one witness on the claimant side, for them not to be attending court on that first day. But then Harry's not exactly your usual witness. So I imagine that his barrister thought perhaps they wouldn't get off opening statements today and that evidence would start tomorrow. And indeed, I think they got about an hour perhaps of one of the reporter's evidence today.
Yeah, so we'll hear from him tomorrow. Paul, lawyers for the newspaper, of course, really making hay about this.
Yes, Prince Harry might do well to apologise to the judge tomorrow, but whether he will or not...
Will that happen?
I rather doubt it, but if I were advising him from a PR point of view, I might say, sorry, my lord. But it's interesting. I mean, today it struck me as a bit like a sort of spicy hors d'oeuvre to a rather hot curry coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, interesting way of putting it. Well, we certainly heard lots of examples today, didn't we, of articles which Harry believes the information was obtained using unlawful methods. This is what the Prince's barrister, David Sherborne, referred to an article in the Daily Mirror back in 1996, which claimed Princess Diana was upset while visiting Prince Harry on his 12th birthday. You can see the article there. Diana, so sad. Just look how young Harry looks. Well, Harry's lawyer said, you will see this is less than a year before the tragic death of his mother. Not a hint of reticence of publishing details of the ill health of someone close to him, all of which were private and not publicly shared. And Persephone, it just shows, doesn't it, that these allegations go back a long way.
They really do, but something which the defendants team were very keen to make clear today is that there is in fact no evidence of actual hacking. They talked about the inferences which the claimant, the Duke of Sussex's team, are encouraging the court to draw, and I think that was something which came across very strongly from those opening statements today. The defendant Mirror Group almost saying, what is there to see here? We don't have any evidence, no inquiries, never come out of the Met Police investigation either. We're going to need, the burden of proof is on the Duke of Sussex, and we need to see more here.
Yeah, it's a good point, that, Paul, isn't it? That Harry does have to prove that his phone was physically hacked, that his mum's phone was physically hacked.
He certainly has to convince the judge that there's enough evidence. Of course, a lot of people, it's interesting, the social media reaction I've been looking at is people don't always realise this is a civil action rather than a criminal case. They talk about guilt and innocence. In fact, the judge could come up with a more nuanced result here. But in reality, it is Harry's side, his legal team, are relying very much on the inference, or trying to convince the judge of the inference of the Mirror have settled £100 million worth of the claim. So therefore, this must be a pattern, and you can't exclude Harry from being one of their targets. The Mirror's team's converse argument is, in fact, where's the proof? Where's the documentation? Specifically about Harry, while acknowledging there is a history, undeniable history of settlements.
Yeah, well, Harry's legal team also quoted from some handwritten letters that have been written by Princess Diana to the entertainer Michael Barrymore. It's something I found particularly fascinating, because she was apologising in those letters for details of their private conversations being published in the Mirror. We can have a look at what was said in court today. This is what Diana said back in the day. Nobody knew about our conversation phone call. How deeply sorry I am that what I considered to be a private matter has become public property. So that's what she wrote to Barrymore. Today, Harry's lawyer said it's plainly that Daily Mirror has been listening in to the voicemail messages. That's how they knew about secret and highly sensitive meetings. Barrymore was struggling with coming out as gay, addiction to drink and drugs, therefore obviously of interest to newspaper reporters. But it does go to show, doesn't it, that it might be circumstantial evidence, but it's pretty strong evidence that a very personal, very private message between two people who knew each other intimately suddenly appears in the paper. How else could it have happened?
I mean, that's exactly what the claimant's case is. I think we've got to see what happens tomorrow in cross-examination, which is going to be absolutely fascinating to see really what Harry can come up with by way of evidence, or more than just trying to create that inference that we've been talking about.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. I'll get your thoughts in a second, Paul, because I want to see what was said in court in defence. This is what Mirror Group newspapers had to say. Andrew Green disputing the claim. He said Mr. Sherborne's suggestion that MGN journalists hacked Princess Diana's phone is total speculation without any evidential basis whatsoever. The letters you were shown to Mr. Barrymore are not evidence of voicemail interception, and there is no other evidence. Plainly, no such finding can be made. Making that point, Paul.
Yes, but Princess Diana had people she trusted and spoke to her in her own inner circle. So it's not. I mean, the Mirror lawyers will argue that it wasn't merely Diana and Michael or Barrymore who were the parties to this conversation, that it was other people who could have been around and passed it on. And certainly in the book, Reporting Royalty, that I'm a co-author of, which has just come out this week, certainly we talk about the history of, especially during the so-called War of the Waleses, when both sides appointed intermediaries who would brief the press, including a couple of occasions, to me, Diana herself. So it's not impossible that other people knew about those conversations and leaked to the press. The burden, as the Mirror lawyers will argue, it can't be proven that that's the only way that the Barrymore Princess Diana conversations reached the papers.
What's the strategy here then, do you think?
Well, a lot of the Mirror's case is just that some of these stories were taken from other newspapers. So it's not simply that there were the possibility of leaks outside of hacking or blagging or bugging or any of the other different allegations which are being put in this litigation and Harry's multiple other litigations against different publishers. But the Mirror Group is saying that there's plenty of reasons how this information could have come to the press, and not simply because of the allegations that are being made by Prince Harry.
Yeah, because of course it's not just about phone hacking this, is it? It's about lots of nefarious methods that were used.
Yes, unlawful information gathering. I think is the way that they're referring
and
to
the
it
one
in
case
court.
that the Mirror have actually acknowledged from the start, of course, they're saying that there's only one incident, and there was a payment to a private detective to unlawfully gather information about Prince Harry. They've conceded that.
But that's being blamed on a rogue journalist rather than what Harry's trying to build is this sort of idea of a campaign of this being undertaken and, this infiltrating at the highest points of the Mirror Group and trickling down through the journalists and being a sort of method of operation, which is what he's really seeking to try to make out here.
Yeah, good. That's a good point. Let's talk about something else that was said in court then, another incident that Harry was involved in. Mr. Sherborne referred to a Daily Mirror article back in September 2000 regarding a trip that he took to the pub for his birthday. Mr. Sherborne said Prince Harry turned up unannounced at this small pub. No journalist is coming along to explain how the photographer was able to be in the right place at the right time. Paul, you've been a newspaper hack, you've worked with journalists, you've worked with reporters. If Harry's phone wasn't hacked, how else would reporters and snappers and paparazzi have known he was going to be there?
I don't know, and we haven't yet heard a discussion in court as to who took the pictures. For example, it could have been a free... often you'd get a call from somebody saying, so-and-so's celebrity is in the pub doing this, doing that, getting drunk, or whatever it might be. And they ring up a newspaper's news desk, and if you have freelance journalists who might live not very far away, they can go around and take and grab pictures. So, in a sense, that isn't conclusive. I mean, the whole thing here is being built as a pattern. That there can't be. The sheer volume is the Harry case. In fact, means there must have been hacking going on. The Mirror are going to say, well, prove it.
It's that's the thing. It's all about the burden of proof, isn't it? And one of the big issues for Harry, and we're going to talk about this now, is his relationships, especially as a young man. And we know that many of the articles that the Duke alleges were sourced from unlawful information gathering relate to that relationship that he had with Chelsea Davy, his first proper girlfriend, really. This is what was said. A number of articles were published over the course of the Prince's relationship, and they discussed these articles here. You can see we've got various articles that were printed in the Mirror and the Sunday Mirror. Harry is a Chelsea fan is one. There's when Harry met Daddy, Harry's girl to dump him. Really personal stuff. Another one here. Chelsea is not happy. Also, when they were splitting up, down in the dumped. And this is a big issue for Prince Harry, isn't it? Because he says that so many of his relationships, whether they were with girlfriends or with his family or with his close circle of friends, they deteriorated because he became increasingly paranoid, didn't he? And he says that it wasn't his friends tipping off the papers, but actually it was phone hacking and these illegal means.
Well, certainly it is the common thread of all the many cases that have been settled by various newspaper groups, over hacking, is that it destroyed relationships, destroyed trust between members of a family or their social circle. Who actually was leaking on them was obviously the suspicion, and I mean that's a pattern. But I think with Harry, he sees it as a sort of crusade to change the press, and others would see it as a sort of morbid obsession. But it's interesting. He is making great play of the effect it had on him psychologically. Now, we all know he's a man of physical courage from his time in the military. Yeah. But facing a KC tomorrow, analytically, it'll be a very different test from appearing on soft interviews for Netflix or with Oprah Winfrey. It's going to be a totally different atmosphere and challenge for him tomorrow.
Yeah. What do you think, Persephone? Is this about reform of the press, or is it about revenge?
Well, you touched upon the distress aspect and actually the damages that Harry's seeking in this litigation. And damages are the only remedy, really, that he will be granted, or could be granted. Those damages are, for the most part, and I think this is why the evidence is moving in this direction, is for the most part based upon distress. So you have distress damages, but you also have damages purely for the infringement, the inability to control your own private information. So that's why the case is looking at that angle in particular. But you're absolutely right. I mean, tomorrow is going to be a very, very different experience from where the previous instances where the Duke of Sussex has been able to control the narrative, and whether or not that narrative has been the narrative that the people have wanted to hear or have appreciated. He holds the cards, and that's going to be very different tomorrow when he's under cross-examination.
Yeah, it really is. And this whole relationship with Chelsea might come up again tomorrow, because today in court, his lawyer said this: he's little more than a child, as was Miss Davy at the time. It was as if they never felt they were on their own, which placed a huge amount of strain on their relationship and ultimately led Miss Davy to decide a royal life wasn't for her. It also caused their circle of friends to become smaller and smaller, meaning that relationships were lost entirely unnecessarily. Tell me about this limitations defence, Persephone, because a lot of people will be thinking, gosh, Chelsea Davy, that's going back in time. Can he still bring that as an example?
So for a case such as this, misuse of private information, you have a 6-year limitation period. And what that means is you have to commence the proceedings within 6 years of either the events taking place or you coming to know of the events, or should reasonably have been expected to know that the events took place. Now, that is where the argument lies, in that sort of grey area.
Because it's obviously a lot longer than 6 years.
And it's the limitation defences which are being run by the other newspapers and some of the other cases that Harry's taking forward in relation to hacking and bugging and unlawful information gathering.
OK, we're just going to talk about another relationship, Paul, and that is with his brother. He says that these articles just put a huge strain on that relationship, which, of course, we know has broken down. This is what Harry's lawyer said in court. He said brothers can sometimes disagree, but once it's made public in this way and inside feelings revealed in the way they are, trust begins to be eroded. I mean, his emotions are really raw.
Well, they are, but if you read Spare closely, not even closely, clearly there's a lot of other things that have happened between him and William that actually play into the broken down relationship between them. So I'm not sure how much you can put on that particular episode that's being cited. But of course, Harry is fighting on two fronts here. He's fighting in the court of law, but he's also fighting in the court of opinion, not just in Britain, but global public opinion. So to him, it's a two-pronged case.
It really is, isn't it? Well, stay where you are. Thank you very much so far. Lots more still to come. We'll have more on what the lawyers said in court today, including from the barrister who will be cross-examining the Duke tomorrow, and we'll look ahead to Prince Harry taking the stand. Don't go away. Hello again and welcome back to our special programme. Now, before the break, we outlined Harry's allegations. Now let's discuss in a bit more detail the newspaper's defence. The barrister representing Mirror Group newspapers has disputed many of the claims put forward by Prince Harry's lawyer. Andrew Green KC said the following. He said there is no evidence to support a finding that any mobile phone used by the Duke of Sussex was hacked on even one occasion. Still less that he was habitually hacked. There is no call data whatsoever for the Duke of Sussex and scant for his associates. Zilch, zero, nil, nada, niente, absolutely nothing, he said. That is a very difficult starting point, that the claimant was habitually hacked or even hacked once. Persephone Bridgman-Baker, media lawyer and partner at Carter Ruck, and Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, former deputy editor of the Daily Mirror, media commentator as well, both here with me now. And we were talking about this early, Persephone, but he has got a point there, hasn't he?
Yes, he absolutely does. And one of the other points which is being countered by by Harry's lawyer is saying that, look, none of these journalists who could give evidence on any of these topics are being put forward by the Mirror Group to give evidence tomorrow or over the course of the case. So this is the other twist which has been brought up today, I think, is that statement, which has been firmly pressed by David Sherborne for Prince Harry.
Yeah, why is that, do you think? Why aren't we hearing from more people who might be able to shed light on some of this?
There are one or two people who've been named by Sherborne earlier in the hearings who, of course, still have senior positions in the Mirror Group. So it's not surprising that Sherborne is saying, well, why aren't they being called? So it'd be interesting to see how how that transpires tomorrow. But of course, I think one name that's going to crop up without a shadow of doubt is that of Piers Morgan. I think it's fair to say that Harry isn't the chairman of the Piers Morgan Admiration Society, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Vice versa.
Yeah, and he's always denied any knowledge, of course, hasn't he? But that is an interesting point, isn't it? That perhaps more people haven't been called. And something else that was interesting when it comes to the defence today, Persephone, was that we heard in court that certain payments had been made, unlawful payments, but those payments aren't linked to any of the actual articles that have been brought up by Harry. And the defence barrister for the newspaper group saying, well, what's going on here? This seems a very strange tactic.
It is definitely a case put together on inference, isn't it? I mean, there were comments by Duke of Sussex's barrister today saying, well, it's obvious that, or plainly it is that. And that just, I think, shows...
It's not good enough, though, is it, in courts of law?
Well, it depends how he does in his evidence, and it depends on how interestingly, I think there's only 3 witnesses on the defendant's side and only 1 on the claimant's side. I mean, the same, I suppose, could be levied to the claimant's side, of course, which is that there are presumably other people who could have given evidence on behalf of Harry. But the judge will be entitled to draw inferences, and is being asked by Harry's lawyer to draw inferences on the basis of the fact that those journalists responsible for some of those 33 articles aren't going to be giving evidence.
Because in other cases, it's transpired, of course, that where dubious payments were being made, the exact reason for the payments weren't in the accounts department, shall we say? So that in itself will be an issue of debate. So it's going to be a very, very interesting day tomorrow.
Well, let's talk more about that then. Just before we close, how is he going to do you think in the witness stand, in the witness box?
Well, I think it's been estimated that it's going to take at least a day and a half, and that's an extraordinarily long time to be grilled by somebody who is out to pick holes in your argument. And I know everybody says that if you're telling the truth, you shouldn't be worried about that at all. But, as lawyers, we talk about litigation risk, about your witness waking up on the wrong side of bed and just, not performing as well as they might do. And particularly for someone who's so used to the media scrutiny and is used to being able to control the narrative in the way that he does, it'll be very interesting to see how that all pans out.
And Persephone, how much can Sherborne for Harry intervene or object during the course of the cross-examination?
So he can make objections, but they have to be legal objections. He can't object to what Harry is saying. He can't sort of interrupt, and I suppose we always see that in American courtroom dramas, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
It'll be a little more reserved tomorrow, although perhaps not much more.
Well, it's been fascinating getting your thoughts on all of this. It is a really interesting case, isn't it? Persephone and Paul, thank you both. And that is day one. The lawyers have set out the arguments, and as you've been hearing, tomorrow the Duke of Sussex will give evidence. His aim, to prove that the stories written about him were the result of illegally obtained information and ultimately change the media landscape. Unlike his interviews of late, he'll have little control over what happens in court. It will be unmissable. And here on Sky News, we'll be back at 9 o'clock tomorrow night with a special programme and all the details from the High Court. Good evening.
Thank you for watching. I'll be bringing you more of what is going on in the UK, what is going on in the UK with Harry and the court. So hopefully it goes well with him. I'm really on it for him to do great there. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like our video. God bless.